Okay, the game we're going to be taking a look at is Axis and Allies WWI 1914. This is the setup for the game, and my camera is hard pressed to get all of the game in one shot. So we'll begin over at the left here with the United States and Canada, and I'll slowly swing over to the right. You can see Africa to the south, Spain, France, Germany, Switzerland, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Sweden, Norway, Great Britain, the expanse of Russia, down into the east, and over to Egypt. And there's your national production chart. So the game is square. It measures about 34 inches by 34 inches. It's quite nice looking. And I'll zoom in and show you some of the pieces and the countries. Now I've been taking a few notes here, courtesy of Board Game Geek, about the history of this series, because I personally don't really have a history with this. Now I've been wargaming since 1969, and as a lot of you probably noticed, my collection in the background is, traditional hex board games, some area movement, some point to point, some CDG, and I have almost no Euro games. And this one I sort of classify as sort of a Euro game, and I never really took it all that seriously. Now, the game came out, the first one was just called Axis and Allies, came out in 1984, and it covered all of World War II. 1999, they released Axis and Allies Europe. 2001, Axis and Allies Pacific. 2004, another edition revised. 2004 again, D-Day, and so on. It continued with Battle of the Bulge, Guadalcanal. They did an anniversary edition in 2008. In 2012, a global edition, 1940. So it wasn't until 2013 that this World War I version of the game came out, and that kind of piqued my interest. When the game came out in 2013, I watched most of the reviews and comments on it with great interest, because I am interested in World War I. And I don't know, the eye candy of the counters, the cool looking ships and infantry, and I knew it was a light war game, but then part of me said, well, is this even a war game? Well, it's a game, and it's about war. And I thought about my collection and some of the games I've seen in the past, and I have to be, I guess I'm won over. Yes, it's a war game. Oh, it's a light war game, but I've seen some board war games that are far inferior to this one. So it's a light war game, it's a game, and it's got some history, a World War I theme. One thing I do like about it is the fact that it can be played up to 7 players. What's this here, 2 to 8 players? I mean, that's pretty interesting. I don't have very many multiplayer games in my collection, very few. And that's what spurred me on to get this one. It's not often we can get 7 guys together here in Ottawa to play a game, but that's one of the reasons why I purchased it. So in this video, I'm going to show you the rules manual, the pieces, the board again, make some comments, but I can't comment from experience. I have 0 experience with this game. I've never played an Axis and Allies game. So you'll have to take with what I say about it with a grain of salt. I can only make comments from what I've read. And I'm buying it because it looks neat, and I just wanted to have a copy. Anyway, the manual. Okay, it seems to be 23 pages long. And I read it, and looks pretty comprehensive to me. To me, there's a lot of wasted space showing you, pictures of the game, showing it off. But it is a practical set of rules. It's easy to play. They show here 7 players, so I guess it's 7. We'll get to the storage boxes and all the eye candy. And we'll get to the plastic pieces, which show infantry, when you have these little poker chips. And to, how do you say, fix the counter clutter that often occurs in these games, you can use these poker chips. The dark colors represent 5 units, the light colors represent 1 unit. So by the combination of the dark, the light, and the counter itself, you can make various stacks of armies. There's your national production chart, where as you take territory, you get more income. There's an overall picture of the board again. I noticed some fan favorites have made their own board, spreading out some of these areas in Europe where the density is quite high and shrinking some of the areas in Africa. I haven't printed that board out, but it's something I might want to consider. There's optional rules for the Russian Revolution. You kind of need that with World War I. Nice illustrations explaining the units, land units, fighters, sea units and how sea combat works, amphibious assaults, the order of play, of course. Plus you get this little wee battle board when units are in the same area, and you go and fight it out on this battle board. The order of play, of course, is very important. Some illustrations of amphibious assault, how that works. You need that, of course. Multinational forces, rules for them. Mobilizing new units, collecting income, and of course, the all-important winning the game. Virtually, for the Allies to win, they have to capture 2 capitals, and for the Central Powers to win, they have to capture 2 capitals. From comments on the game, well, the early comments were not favorable for the first edition. And this edition I just bought a few weeks ago. It's from Renegade Games Limited, and the first edition was from, I forgot the name. Maybe it's in Board Game Geek here. Yeah, the first edition of 1914 seems to be Wizards of the Coast. Original publishers were Avalon Hill under the auspices of Hasbro, and of course this one is Renegade Games. So one of the early criticisms was that there was not enough counters to play the game, which just totally turned me off. If you don't have enough counters to play the game, that's a real no-no for me. So that's why I begged off. And it got mixed reviews, so that scared me off. I didn't buy it. So here it is, like 11 years later, and I finally did buy it. And I've just set it up. I did notice that there's a few Russian pieces I think I don't have enough counters for. Russian battleships, I think it was. So a few pieces were short, but I just took areas where they had a couple of extra pieces and just put them in the ones that were short. So you can get around it. Now, is this a serious war game? Well, look, it's a war game and it's light, but I still count it as being a war game. As I mentioned, some of the fans have posted another version of the map looking cosmetically like the first one. They've just given more areas in the Western Front where it gets a little bit cluttered in there, apparently. I wouldn't know. I haven't tried it yet. You get those poker chips there, which are kind of neat because they've got little grooves in them, which means when you put a man on top of them or stack them, they hold together pretty tight. You use red for the Central Powers and blue for the Allies. Again, there's a combination of light and darker ones. So, and of course you've got control markers. Although the markers themselves, the units themselves, in an area indicate control. Closer look at the board, you'll be able to get to see some of the kind of the eye candy counters in this game. Okay, we'll start here in the west, showing you United States and Canada. And you can see with the dark blue base representing 5 units, then the unit itself. So there's 6 infantry there and 2 artillery. At sea, you can see 1 battleship and 1 cruiser. In Canada, again, 6 infantry and 2 artillery. Okay, now we're looking at Great Britain and Ireland. You can see these are German U-boats off of Ireland. You can see the English army spread out, 2 artillery and lots of infantry. Swing over and look at France, dark blue. Plenty of infantry all over the country. Lots of artillery. You can see a battleship here and a troop transport. And their Southern Fleet battleship, cruiser squadron, and 2 transports. And you've got some air units here too. The continent of Africa played its part in World War I. You can see French units in Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and in French West Africa. A little bit further to east, you see other countries' units there. Italians in Libya, and Germans in Cameroons, Togoland. Some British there in South Africa. And off to the east a little bit, you see more English in the Egyptian Sudan and British East Africa. Okay, the light brown units are Italians. Lots of infantry there, lots of artillery. Of course, they have a fleet too. Battleship, troop transport, and a cruiser. And in the background from them, you can see Austro-Hungary's forces. They're in green. Again, lots of infantry, artillery, and they also have a fleet here in the Adriatic. To the north of them, the Germans. Lots of infantry. And you can see the High Seas Fleet again, battleships and cruisers. Way off to the east, in the far distance with its vast territories, are Russian units, kind of dark brown all over the place. Lots of infantry and artillery. And we mustn't forget the Turks are over here in this kind of bluish green color. Constantinople into the Transjordan. And of course, this is where all the stuff we've seen in the movie Lawrence of Arabia takes place. And you've got British units way off in the distance there in India. So that's overall the setup of the game. Quite a few units. Now the company's done a great job in storage, in putting away the game. Each individual country has its own little wee box, and the order of battle, or the start, is on each box. They're easy to pull out. Take the tops off here, and your units are there. Every country has its own box. And this box here is used for the chips, the dice, and the control markers. So, coming from the world of board war games where I punch out the counters and have to sort them and put labels on them, this was a nice treat, just having the thing already sorted and ready to put away or set up. Now, yes, there's dice. Apparently, lots of dice. But I'm not that familiar with the combat system, but I hear it's pretty bloody. But they've made some changes from the original Axis and Allies, changes that I would not be familiar with. But let's just show you an overview of how some of the combat works. Now in the game, let's say we had a situation where there was 3 German infantry units attacking 2 French units supported by artillery. You don't actually move the units onto the battle board. I guess you could if you wanted to, but it could get pretty messy. So here's the solution that they have. according to the rules. In our case, the German will be the attacker. So what you do is you take 3 dice, 1 dice for each infantry, and place it on the battle board, like so. 3 attacking infantry, 3 dice. Now the defending player does the same. Remember, he had 2 infantry and 1 artillery, so he places 3 dice because he had 2 infantry and 1 artillery. Now, if air units were involved in that battle, you would do a whole little sub-procedure to determine who has air superiority, which then would affect the outcome on the battle board. In this case, if the French had achieved air superiority, it put a little air unit there in this box to show that artillery with air superiority support, which is going to affect the battle, of course. Now, according to the rules, you don't put an airplane there like I just did. You put an artillery there to show that this die is represented by that artillery. So in this battle, the Germans will be rolling 3 dice, and they will hit on a 1 or 2. The French will be rolling 2 dice, and they'll hit on a 1, 2, or 3. But the artillery will roll 1 dice and will hit on a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So it's these simple mechanics that can change the complexity of each battle, because you've got battleship bombardment, you've got maybe one side with artillery, one side doesn't have artillery, you've got air supremacy, and later on in the game you've also got tanks. So this little battle board, though simple, is quite elegant, and I think it's pretty neat. I don't know if the World War II game had a battle board like that, but it does seem to demonstrate kind of World War I tactics and the advantages each side could have depending on the equipment they owned. So that's a little bit of what World War I, Axis and Allies is all about. Now, there's much I could tell you about collecting income and spending it on new units. That's nothing new. We've seen that in many other games. The Russian Revolution rule is optional if you want your game to be a bit more historical. But Axis and Allies, the way I understand it, was always designed to be kind of balanced, especially with 7 players. It's no fun if one person takes a country that doesn't have a chance and is knocked out of the game early. So how this game plays in a 7-player environment, I have no idea. Several people have put videos up, I think, showing how to play. Maybe I should take a look at those again. So I just wanted to show the game to people who are not familiar with the Axis and Allies system, because I certainly am not. Is it the final word on World War I games? No. It is not Paths of Glory, and it is not The Lamps Are Going Out. I think Lamps is one of my favorite World War I games and is a true simulation of that war. This one is a nice, light, fun war game. And I see that some of the fandom out there have done variant rules to make the game more historical. Anyway, that's it for Axis and Allies World War I 1914. Thank you for watching.